DNA, disease, and our destiny. This is part 2 of our sharing about the causes of disease. And today I will begin with a story, actually a historical fact. In the 19th century, Napoleon's last battle was the Battle of Waterloo. It was fought in 1815, and this battle was fought over one day, but many people were killed on that day, over 25,000 people. What surprises archaeologists is that they have looked for mass graves of these people, but they have found none. Why? Because shortly after this battle, in the 1820s, the booming business in Europe was the buying and selling of corpses or bones from the soldiers who died in the Battle of Waterloo. One time it was reported that the bread that was put on the table in New England was at the expense of the life of the soldiers, of their children. So why were bones being bought at such an expensive price? There were two major reasons. One was the sugar factories that were raising. They were using animal charcoal from these bones in the refining of sugar. Number two, they were getting these bones to get fertilizers that were used in farming, because back then wood ash from the US to Europe was expensive. So in order to have good fertilizers, people turned to excavation, selling and buying of bones from the soldiers that died in the Battle of Waterloo. That's why there are no archaeological findings for mass graves in Europe for the bodies of the Battle of Waterloo. Why am I bringing all this? Well, to fertilize the land meant that they were adding minerals in these soils, actually living minerals from living bones or from dead bones, from bones of people who were living back then. There is an important thing I want us to talk about today. It is about epigenetics, the interaction of our genes with our environment. So in factories, as they are producing this, let me say, a plastic company, they have a mold into which anything that comes out of it is identical to the previous one. Now, originally, scientists used to think that our DNA is like a mold where each and everything that comes out is a copy, a look-alike, except maybe an accident in a factory would cause a change in shape. But our DNA is more or less not like that. Nessa Curry, in his book, The Epigenetic Revolution, outlines that our DNA is like a script read by different people with different results. If we found an accident somewhere and we asked 3 people what happened, everyone has a different description of what they saw. Yet it's the same scene. So Nessa Curry gives us this, that epigenetics deals with the understanding of how our environment interacts with our genes. And Clifford Pickover says that epigenetics is a study of how our body and our behavior and the environment determine our genetic expression without altering the DNA. So food sources have determined the population densities, they have determined health, they have determined population distribution, they have determined longevity, besides the natural calamities and disasters that happen. So this was shown by scientist Dr. Joel Wallach in his experiment. He did an experiment with 100 ducks obtained from the same mother and the same father. How did he get this? Every time the duck laid an egg, Wallach took away the egg and froze it until when he made 100 eggs. Then he incubated them and they hatched. Same mother, same father. He divided this into 4 groups. Group 1, he fed it with lettuce. So group 1, he fed it with lettuce. Group 2, he fed it with barley. Group 3, he fed it with purina, dark growth pellets. And group 4, he fed it with purina, growth pellets, and barley over a period of a month. After a month, he discovered that group 1 and 2, they had a slight growth. Then group 3 had a 3 times growth than group 1. Then group 4 had a 2 times growth than group 3. That means that group 4 was able to grow 6 times more than group 1 and group 2. Same genetic makeup, but different expression as far as the relation to the environment and the nutrition that was given to these ducklings. The same applies to human beings. Our genetic expression is influenced by our environment and our nutrition choices without altering the DNA in and of itself. What do I mean? Let me give you an example. Those Japanese who are living in Japan, who thrived in Japan, mainly their diet is rice, vegetables, and fish. And they obtain a height of 4 feet and some like 11 inches. So when such Japanese cross from Japan to the US and they are exposed to high calorie foods, calorie dense foods used without restriction in abundance, they are able to obtain even up to a height of 6.5 feet. Why? Because of the abundance, the expression of their genes is maximized. Actually, one Japanese, an offspring from those who migrated to America, was able even to fit in the American football team, a team that requires physique, strength, and energy, because he attained even up to 6.5 feet due to exposure to nutrition or nutrition-rich foods without restriction. So diet influenced the expression of the genes in this Japanese. Even when you move to another place, you realize those who go there and those who are born in that place, there's a slight difference because the nutrition in the area has influenced the genetic expression of those who have been born in that area, yet they were immigrants. We are going to talk more about that as we study. So today, farming is characterized by high intense fertilization. And last time we gave example of probably NPKs. Now, these are synthetic fertilizers synthesized in laboratories. There is a difference between a synthetic fertilizer and a natural fertilizer. In the soils, we have what we call microorganisms. These ones are responsible to extract minerals from the soil to make them available to the plants. We have an example of nitrogen-fixing bacteria we find in legumes and many more microorganisms we find in the soil. So these synthetic fertilizers, they are key to destruction of these microorganisms. That's why they may not feed the soil, but they may cause abnormal growths in the crops which grow with few minerals, yet they have the desirable market size. The crop is big but not nutritious. It is lacking many minerals because of intense fertilization that happens today. So one of the major minerals that we need in the body is nitrogen and magnesium. Previously, I told you magnesium takes part in more than 300 different reactions in the body. Sometimes you are anxious because magnesium is low. Sometimes you are depressed because magnesium is low. Sometimes you are confused because magnesium is low. Over 300 different kinds of reactions in the body, magnesium takes part. And in one of them is a catalyst to the first 3 steps in the glycolysis cycle. Your quick utilization of glucose in a cell, glycolysis, is driven by magnesium, especially those first 3 steps. We will talk more about that maybe later. Nitrogen is a key component in amino acids. Amino acids, which are the building blocks for proteins. You see? So nitrogen and magnesium, they are very important minerals. Not only these, but even other minerals. We see that one of the great things that God did for man in the Garden of Eden, when he had sinned, the first thing that God added to man was chlorophyll. Why does it make sense? Genesis chapter 2 verse 18, after God tells man that the herb of the field he will eat. Why did he add this? Notice the major components of chlorophyll, besides the long carbon chains in it, is nitrogen, and the central mineral is magnesium. So God added 2 essential things for man shortly after sin. Get it? That's why today chlorophyll is very important. And somewhere he says, the leaves are for the healing of nations. There is a lot of minerals in our vegetables that we eat. Only that today we have spoiled them by the intense fertilization that we carry out. But our minerals will come from the vegetables that we eat. It's very key to know that. So I want to give you a few examples of what deficiency means, both in history and maybe today. 1000 BC in Egypt, it was wrecked with a disease called night blindness. And one way how they used to cure this disease, they used to squeeze liver juice into the eyes and the faces of those who are suffering from night blindness. So juice from the liver. And in Eber's papyrus, the oldest medical papyrus ever discovered, prescriptions of ox liver or lamb liver for people suffering from night blindness are seen there. Then in another papyrus, so to speak, the name I've forgotten, a woman was advised to eat liver from an ass. So why did the liver play an important role in the cure of night blindness? Today science discovers that night blindness is a cause of a deficiency in vitamin A. Deficiency in vitamin A. And we know the liver stores much more vitamin A. What food sources can we use to get vitamin A? We have carrots, we have spinach, we have butternuts. All these are good sources. We have mangoes. They are good sources of vitamin A. So you do well to include those things in your diet to have enough vitamin A. The liver contains vitamin A. That's why it was able to heal night blindness. But before healing, you can prevent by eating foods rich in these carrots, spinach, butternuts, mangoes. Another example I would give you is the issue of pellagra that rocked in the 19th century, both in Europe and in South America. Pellagra has these different symptoms. You have dermatitis, especially those places which are exposed to the sun. Dermatitis, inflammation of the skin. We have diarrhea, and we have dementia, which would lead to death. So these were the symptoms that were wrecking in Europe, so to speak. And many scientists believed that pellagra was due to an infection by a microorganism. So everywhere they would ask, where is the germ? Where is the germ? Scientists looking for the germ, even they reached a level of accepting that maybe doctors carry the germ that causes pellagra with them. As they visit different patients, they carry it to another patient. It was a person called Vogeltin who first deduced that pellagra was an issue of nutrition deficiency. Of course, he was opposed by the science of his time, and he did not prove his theory, but he established it that pellagra is a nutrition deficiency disease. After a time, a man called Joseph Goldberg in the US was appointed to find out what is causing disease in Southern America. When he went there, he noticed that some of the youths were not suffering from pellagra, while the young ones were suffering from pellagra. And he noticed that these youths could work, get money, and buy for themselves good foods, vegetables, fruits, meat. So this called attention to him, and he went into an orphanage where kids or children who had pellagra, he fed them nutrition-dense diets, and he ended pellagra in these orphanage centers. He deduced that pellagra also is a nutrition deficiency disease, but it was not ready to be accepted by the scientific world. Actually, one of the scientists believed that pellagra was caused by a fungus on corn. Let me talk about corn. Back then, those days, in Europe and America, the major food that was used was corn. Actually, the slaves in South America, they used to feed on cornmeal, pork, and molasses. The three M's of their feeding. Even in prisons, the major food was corn. So pellagra was seen among the poor, among the slaves, and in prisons. But the common denominator in all those was use of corn. Now, corn is not the problem, but what was the problem? The use of corn made a deficiency in the people. Why? Because pellagra is a disease due to deficiency of vitamin B3 called niacin. Niacin is the deficient vitamin in pellagra disease, causing dementia, diarrhea, dermatitis, and death. So corn or maize contains niacin, but in low quantities. And this low quantity is not readily available. So the Mesoamericans, what they used to do to obtain this niacin in the corn, they used to do what we call nixtamization, where they would soak and boil corn in lime water, or, so to speak, wood ash. So they will get wood ash, then boil the corn together. This lime water helps to make niacin readily available. So because of the poor preparation of corn, niacin was not available. That's why pellagra was common in the areas which we are using corn so much. So when Goldberger went into these areas, he discovered that, and he started to feed people foods rich in vitamin B3 or niacin, your vegetables, your spinach, your lentils, your legumes, your peanuts, cereals, seeds, avocados, they are all rich in vitamin B3. But the scientific world was not ready to accept Goldberger's thesis. So what he did, he organized an experiment where prisoners were guaranteed to be released as long as they accepted to contract pellagra. And indeed, in 6 months, Goldberger had produced pellagra in these prisoners who accepted to take part in his experiment, and they were released. Shortly after, he gave them, he managed them, and they got healed of pellagra because he knew the deficiencies that happen in the disease. When he provided it, they were healed. So scientific world was not ready to accept Goldberger's thesis. So what he did what we call the dirty party, an experiment with dirt. The dirt party. Here he got excrement from those sick with pellagra. He got the mucus, the skin scraps that they got from people with pellagra. Even they could put a swab down up to the throat to acquire that mucus concentrated with, if it were germs that cause pellagra. So when he obtained those, he wrapped them in wheat and he swallowed it. Not him alone, even those on his team, he convinced them to take part in this experiment, and they all swallowed this. The good news is none of them contracted pellagra. Even his wife took part. After getting the mucus from the diseased people, they injected it in her tummy, but she did not contract pellagra. Goldberger proved to the entire world, to the entire scientific world, that pellagra is not a microbial disease. It's not caused by microorganisms, but it was due to nutrition deficiency. And with this, it was discovered later that the deficient component in pellagra was vitamin B3. Because of the deficiencies we have in us, we contract diseases because of the deficiencies. Nutrition and nutrition deficiencies determine the genetic expressions even of our bodies. Disease comes because of what? Deficiencies. Hippocrates said, "Let food be your medicine, and medicine be your food." And the wise man added, "If you don't eat food as medicine today, you eat medicine as food tomorrow." In 1953, the man called Watson and Crick discovered the double helix of DNA, and they thought that by unwrapping the double helix of DNA, they could find the true cause of disease. But down the road today, nothing has been found. Watson and Crick, they discovered that majorly, actually we see that DNA is made up of 4 nitrogenous bases, that is arginine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. These 4 components, they can provide information that can run from here to the moon 500,000 times. That information being read. It's too much an information. This information can pack books that can fill the entire earth. Only 4 of them. It is the play of these codes that determines the genetic expression of an individual, influenced by cofactors and enzymes. Cofactors as minerals, then enzymes which run the process. Without enzymes, these processes cannot run. DNA replication, DNA transcription cannot run without enzymes because they are the catalysts that pull together substances that take part in these reactions. Well, this genetist Watson, in his address at Silk Institute on March 25, 2013, if I'm not mistaken, it was March 23rd, 2013. In his address, he said, at this point of time, we do not need more of gene sequencing and gene mapping. We need more of biochemistry to understand the interaction of the food we eat with our genes. We need more of biochemistry. We are biochemical organisms. Understanding how the food we eat relates with our genes is very key to fighting diseases. That's why God made the right nutrients for man right from the beginning. As simple as it was, today we have walked far away from that simplicity, and disease wrecks the human being. Until we go back to the fundamental principles of true health and true living, we will find true happiness. We meet in the next one as we talk about health in the different angles of life. Praise be to God always.